Part 19. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 182. To a wanderer, the night view of his hometown is something that he cannot get enough of. But there was always a time when he got tired of watching it. After Jia Yan flew for a while, he stopped paying attention to the night scene. The big mosquito flew quickly, extremely fast. The laptop bag on my body has been hidden in a secret place on the rooftop of my home. If you want to hide something on the rooftop of your home, Jia Yan has many secret places. For Jia Yan, the distance of 3 kilometers is reached in an instant. And just when Jia Yan arrived at the tourism project development zone, he was flying in the sky, looking at the fire rising into the sky below, and finally couldn't help but sigh slightly in his heart. I was just guessing whether the explosion was caused by those metal monsters. But he has been unwilling to think in this direction. After all, Jia Yan doesn't want to see this hometown city end up like those other towns. But now that he's here, he suddenly finds that his worst guess has been confirmed. Sure enough, they are those metal monsters. Alas, this kind of thing is inevitable, Jia Yan sighed deeply in his heart. It is impossible to imagine that your hometown will not be attacked by metal monsters. The coastal cities have become such a rotten state, there is no reason why the cities here can still be safe and sound. I just didn't expect it to happen so soon. That's right, under Jia Yan, metal monsters are raging in this place one after another. The red light weapon on the top of their heads continuously shoots out light, and then hits the tourist facilities. Those facilities seem to have been planted with bombs, exploding quickly one by one, and the sound of the explosion was extremely loud. Jia Yan looked at the apocalyptic scene below and admired himself for actually escaping with his life again and again when facing these monsters. From the perspective of a bystander, this was simply impossible. After sighing with emotion, Jia Yan discovered that there was a metal monster below that seemed to have discovered his trace, and then its head gun barrel, which was still emitting red light, was suddenly aimed at the sky. No. You were careless, Jia Yan was shocked. But since he was flying at a high altitude and his speed was really not fast this time, he couldn't reach the fastest speed even after the first speed increase. Boom. Red light shoots out. Just as Jia Yan spread his wings, he was hit in the head. Bang. A shocking fire burst out in mid-air. The big mosquito was shot in the head. When the metal monster below saw this scene, he immediately stopped caring. In his opinion, the flying monster was obviously dead. It continued to move its 4 legs, searching for possible living creatures around it. Their mission is to kill all the creatures they see, so they cause massacres on the ground like this. What this metal monster didn't expect was that in the firelight that he was not paying attention to, a dark creature with a hint of blue slowly emerged from the firelight in the sky. His body was huge and he flew out in the fire, but there were almost no scars. Jia Yan, the mosquito monster, could withstand an attack from this metal monster as early as when he was under Mount Fuji. Although, at that time, he had to use the blue color in his body to be able to resist it, but after all, he was able to resist it. But now, compared to what he was then, he has evolved and mutated again. There's no reason why I can't resist this time. Boom boom boom. In the firelight that filled the sky, the figure of this big mosquito monster was quickly revealed. Jia Yan's pair of compound eyes were moving with a faint flickering light. This brilliant light may be reflecting the light of the moon above his head, or it may be the scene of fire shooting into the sky below the reflection. Anyway, at this time, he is looking at the metal monsters below with that very strange expression. You were the first to strike. Jia Yan's compound eyes, which shone slightly, finally had a hint of murderous intent. Forget about other cities, this city has his family. Since he has been reborn as a powerful giant mosquito, there is no reason not to create a safe environment for his family. The big mosquito moved directly. Fly down. The metal monster on the ground, the metal tube on the top of its head, is like a gun muzzle. At this time, the gun barrel emits a faint red light and is pointed at a building in front. There is a faint sound of human crying in this building. The red light in front of its head is getting stronger and stronger. Just when the red light was shining fiercely, it almost reached the critical point of shooting. Howl! A figure quickly descended from the sky. The metal monster seemed to be vaguely aware of it at this time. Its head was about to turn and aim its gun at the rapidly approaching thing. The speed of metal monsters may not sound fast, but in fact their speed is extremely fast. However, the moment this metal monster turned around, a huge thing with a dark body, already carrying a strong wind, fell rapidly from the sky and hit the body of this metal monster. Make a loud noise. It just so happened that the red light of the metal monster exploded at this time, aiming at the huge dark thing above its head and blasting away. The appearance of the red light made the earth-shattering explosion even more intense. Boom boom boom. The surrounding houses were affected by the shock wave caused by the explosion. The glass of the house was broken piece by piece. And some of these buildings were so strong that the walls collapsed. Click, click, click. Boom boom boom. A house could not withstand the power of the explosion. It was crumbling and finally collapsed. But there were screams coming from underneath the house. But after a while, there was no sound anymore. I didn't expect there were humans here. And there seems to be a lot of them. The battle between the big mosquito and the metal monster only lasted for a moment, and the winner was decided in just a moment. One of Jia Yan's front feet pierced into the bloody heart of the metal monster. This heart is the vital point of the metal monster. However, without the super sharpness of Jia Yan's front feet, it would be basically impossible to destroy this place in battle. The two bodies collided rapidly and crashed into a house. This place may be a performance place, and the building is relatively tall. There should have been no one there, but as soon as they crashed into it, they heard screams. The big mosquito shook off the metal monster stuck in its front foot, and then stood up from the ground. The sight before him surprised him. It turns out there are many humans in this place. Although he had already known that there were humans here through his eyes that sensed infrared heat sources, he was still a little surprised to see so many humans hiding here. This house was originally a place used for performances, so the area is not very small, so the capacity to accommodate humans is also not small. At this time, about 70 or 80 people were hiding in this place. When they saw Jia Yan colliding with the metal monster and rushing into the house, they were all trembling as they looked at the sudden appearance of the giant mosquito monster. They are worried that this giant mosquito monster might also endanger their lives. Jia Yan's battle with the metal monster was so fast that these humans had no time to move and collided into the house. Each of them was too frightened to make any move, for fear of provoking the huge monster in front of them. Attack them. Jia Yan looked at the humans in front of him and quickly discovered the large and small bags they carried with them. I know where they come from, and those in the square and in the new buildings, they are all refugees who escaped from other places. Jia Yan's mind was not slow and he immediately guessed where these people came from. No wonder there were many people in the intact cities he saw along the way. Obviously these were human beings who had escaped. In troubled times, civilians are indeed the biggest victims. These people all look very tired, and now they are frightened by the battle between Jia Yan and the metal monster. Alas, there are still dozens of metal monsters left. Before I destroy them all, I hope they wish themselves well. Jia Yan still has to fight dozens of metal monsters. It is impossible to protect these humans, so he can only say that these humans are asking for blessings. What's more, he is not the savior of these people. What he has to do is to ensure that these metal monsters cannot harm his family. The life and death of others has nothing to do with him. The big mosquito stepped on the ground with 6 long legs, and stood up completely, directly touching the ceiling of the house. Compared with those metal monsters that are scary but not actually tall, his figure is more violent and looks like a real monster. These humans obviously did not expect that when they were nervously avoiding the pursuit of the metal monster, such a monster would actually come out and kill the metal monster. But this is not good news for them. This monster seems to be more powerful than the metal monster. God knows if it also kills humans. In that case, it will be harder for them to escape. But what was beyond people's expectation was that after the dark monster looked at these humans for a moment, he actually moved his slender 6 legs and walked out directly from the big hole he opened. What a danger! This monster is so huge, even the metal monsters are insignificant compared to him. Someone looked at the back of the big mosquito leaving, and suddenly took a long breath, and his face turned pale. A monster with a body of 2.5 meters may not be that huge, but its legs are too long, each one reaching more than 6 meters. When standing up, this monster can stand up to 5 or 6 meters high. This way monsters are not scary, but what kind of monsters are scary? How do I look at this monster? It looks like a big mosquito. Could it be that he is the giant mosquito monster that was mentioned on TV some time ago? Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 183. Impossible. The giant mosquito monster on TV is only a few dozen centimeters in size. This monster is at least measured in meters. But he may be the same kind as the giant mosquito monster. After all, I heard that a similar giant mosquito monster also appeared in the Japanese country, but it seemed to be a little smaller than this one. I guess this is another one. There is a new giant mosquito monster. How many of these monsters are there? Then what should we do now? Should we risk going out? This giant mosquito monster seems to be fighting these metal monsters. Can we take the opportunity to escape? Staying here will lead to death. Let's go. The humans in the house construction began to discuss the next trip. They are all looking forward to seeing this giant mosquito monster die together with the metal monsters outside. But these people will never see this scene. How could Jia Yan die together with those metal monsters? At this time, he was a big mosquito with faint compound eyes, walking slowly out of the house. His body has a faint blue color. However, this blue color is not very conspicuous, it just adds a touch of brilliance to its dark exoskeleton. But the appearance of this blue color means that Jia Yan is also not feeling well at this time. He suffered 2 red light attacks from metal monsters. On the surface, it seems that his body just has a little more blue color, but only those who truly know the composition of Jia Yan's body, only then will people realize that he is also on the verge of danger now. After Jia Yan obtained this mutation, it became more difficult for that blue color to appear. It would only appear after enduring a relatively powerful attack. And now there is actually a blue substance condensing on the surface of the body, so it can be seen that Jia Yan was not completely immune to the previous red light attack. This is just an attack from a metal monster. If you are attacked by several metal monsters at the same time, and even the azure substance has no time to defend, it will be really dangerous. I still don't know what the red rays are. Jia Yan only knows that they are not real rays. Because its speed does not reach the speed of light at all. Otherwise, it would be absolutely impossible for Jia Yan to avoid it. But Jia Yan was on the previously dismembered metal monster. No bullets or anything like that were found. That would be very strange. What is the red light they emit? Jia Yan really wanted to solve this mystery. Just when his figure had just walked out of the hole in the house. Swish! 2 red rays of light shot towards his direction, one after another. Jia Yanfu's eyes sparkled with light. Then his 6 legs moved quickly, and the wings on his sides were flapping crazily. It moved sideways in an instant. And the house behind him was hit directly in the middle. Boom boom. 2 thundering sounds shook the sky and the earth. The house was torn in half. Ah! Among the flying debris, Jia Yan heard the miserable cries of human beings. There were also some broken limbs flying up in the explosion, and even human internal organs were smeared all over the sky. But fortunately, there were still some humans who had escaped before that. Figures were nervously interspersed in the dark corner behind. Jia Yan couldn't help but sigh slightly in his heart. Human lives disappeared one after another. But the metal monster wouldn't give him any time to sigh. Just when Jia Yan could barely avoid 2 red rays of light, 7 or 8 metal monsters with radiant appearance appeared in the sky full of firelight. They vaguely surrounded Jia Yan. Perhaps these monsters all know that Jia Yan is a flying creature that is difficult to catch, and they met him at this time. Just streaks of red light shooting out. They wanted to catch this big mosquito creature before it spread its wings. Just kill it first. This is the terrible thing about metal monster information sharing. Jia Yan just showed up, and his information was known to other metal monsters here. Jia Yan felt calm in his heart. After fighting for a long time, he has learned that the more nervous you are, the easier it is to make mistakes. If you are anxious at this time, it is tantamount to seeking death. I don't know if my clot and exoskeleton defense can protect against all red light, and I can't expect too much that the blue substance will appear. If it lets me go once, it will be over. So we can't bear all the red light explosions obediently at this time, although it is impossible to avoid them completely. Then, Jia Yan looked at the red light in all directions. These rays of light were all at very weird angles, blocking almost all of Jia Yan's escape routes. No matter whether it is upward or left or right, you will inevitably be hit by the red light. However, Jia Yan still chose to go up. Since the attacks from each direction could not kill many, of course he would choose the next direction with more room for maneuver to dodge. You know, he is a flying creature. Wouldn't it be silly not to maintain such a huge advantage? Howl! The wings of the big mosquito vibrated violently. It became extremely intense the first time. His huge body suddenly moved. Hoo ho ho! In an instant, it flew up crazily. But the red light that had already covered the top immediately blocked Jia Yan's way. Boom! Amidst the huge sound of the earth shattering, the big mosquito was violently knocked into the air. But it looks like he doesn't have much scars on his appearance. Those clots were broken and penetrated, but the clot tissue underneath the clots completely withstood the remaining power of the explosion. Very good, I'm flying. It's me who controls the air now. Jia Yan suddenly felt a slight pain in the air, regardless of the wing parts that were hit by the bombardment. Just try to flap your wings. Boom boom boom. The red rays of light that did not hit Jia Yan hit nearby buildings in almost no particular order. A series of explosions came from below. Jia Yan rode on the sound of these explosions, like a fire phoenix reborn from the fire, carrying a stream of flames and rushing directly in front of the body of a metal monster. His compound eyes have a faint luster. This luster is extremely close to the body of the metal monster. It directly reflects the body shape of the metal monster. Then, before the opponent had time to react, Jia Yan swung his front foot. Poof! There was no time for the assassination, so he had to use a knife to chop. Jia Yan has been helping him find new ways to attack the knife-shaped horns on his front feet. It used to be because the forefoot itself didn't have enough weight. If you use an attack method other than forward stabbing, it is very likely that the front foot itself is not heavy enough to form an effective attack. But it's different now. Jia Yan has undergone another mutation, and his body has undergone even greater changes. Just talking about the front feet not only increase in weight. The length is also much longer than before, if you want to attack. A direct cut from top to bottom already has considerable attack power. So at this time, Jia Yan just cut down. The target metal monster never expected that this giant mosquito monster could break out so quickly despite the bombardment of red light. Attack him. Jia Yan cuts it off with one slash. This metal monster had no time to react. Click. The sharp knife-shaped horn is like the invincible Guangong sword in ancient times. With a slash from the side, one of the moving legs of the metal monster was cut off. Kaka. This metal monster fell to the ground immediately. The lack of a foot is a very serious problem for the overweight monster's balance. So it fell to the ground. But at this moment, a bright light continued to flash. Jia Yan's other sharp, knife-shaped horn was once again like a meteor streaking through the sky. Aim and slash at this metal monster. But before that, Jia Yan's body had already made a shift. This shift directly allowed him to dodge a red light that was shooting at him. He has a lot to do in battle, not only attack, but also defense. This is the first time that Jia Yan has faced so many metal monsters. These metal monsters not only have extremely strong attack power, but also have strong defense power. Jia Yan will naturally go all out. Hong Guang didn't help his companions, Jia Yan's sharp front feet still slashed down. After a slight sound, the metal monster in front of Jia Yan finally lay down completely. Its heart was cut open by Jia Yan with a knife, and all the material inside burst out. The flashing red light on the head of this metal monster was immediately extinguished. Apparently it lost the ability to move in an instant. Very good, one has been solved. Jia Yan was slightly excited, but the next task was still arduous. His opponents are still hopelessly numerous. At this time, many metal monsters are gradually coming from not far away. There are at least 30 or 40 monsters in the current tourist project building complex, and the team they formed is not very far apart. At this time, they are entangled and the speed is extremely fast. But the big mosquito shows no fear at all. Compared with ordinary creatures, his endurance can be said to be extremely superior. Don't be afraid of a protracted battle. Jia Yan's body quickly flew into the air. When this flying creature came into the air, except for the initial period of rebirth, Jia Yan was almost invincible. At least for now, there is no existence that can pose a threat to him in the air. So the giant mosquito flew up and immediately started to attack actively, and his attack mode was also very simple and violent, that is, charging forward, and then slashing or piercing the body of the metal monster with its knife-shaped horn. Avoid those red rays if you can, but bear them head-on if you can't. Boom boom boom. There were constant explosions in the air. At this time, Jia Yan was like a warrior who didn't care about the bombing, rushing forward against the red light. His body was often bombarded and sent flying backwards, but the next moment he readjusted his position and continued to charge forward. When he came to a metal monster, he stabbed with his front foot. Poof! Another monster was stabbed hard by Jia Yan. This time, Jia Yan used a knife-shaped horny front stab. Forward stabbing is Jia Yan's strongest attack method now. The attack power is absolutely powerful, and one stab can completely pierce the heart of the metal monster, which is only protected by layers of defense. But more metal monsters flew out at this time. They probably made a decision to kill Jia Yan directly in this tourism project development center. Boom boom boom. A stream of fire shot into the sky. In the explosion of red light, Jia Yan's body flashed very fast, and he quickly came to a metal monster. Attack again. When he quickly passed by the monster's body also shattered and fell down into a corpse without the ability to move. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 184. Second update today, please subscribe. In this battle, Jia Yan's body became more and more flexible, and he had more and more attack methods. And the red light attacking his body became less and less. The more he fought, the more profound Jia Yan's pair of compound eyes flashed with faint luster became. That's right. Big Mosquito's actual combat ability improved rapidly in this battle. Although the Jia Yan used to do a lot of actual combat, he would change his body soon after every actual combat. The actual combat ability that he has cultivated through such hard work is equivalent to being greatly reduced, and now, after his body reaches such a huge size, this is the first time he has tried such an intense battle. Therefore, his actual combat experience in this battle has definitely skyrocketed. In this battle, he can learn a lot. Boom boom boom. Another series of red light attacks failed. Flames shot up into the sky. Almost all the metal monsters have gathered here. Dozens of metal monsters gathered, making their attack firepower more powerful, and the original free attack method turned into an attack mode that seemed to be commanded by someone. Focus on shooting. Their attack power has also become extremely powerful. Although Jia Yan was also improving his actual combat strength, he became miserable at this time. He has experienced the feeling of the human army on Earth. This feeling will definitely not be wonderful, but very difficult. The space for him to hide became less and less, and his body, which was relatively comfortable at first, became a little embarrassed. However, those metal monsters did not look down on their enemies at all. Their attacks are still so fierce, and there are some individuals who are not afraid of death, risking being killed by Jia Yan first, coming close and attacking Jia Yan directly. Poof! Jia Yan stabbed with a knife-shaped horn on his front foot, knocking down a metal monster that jumped out of the air to attack him. Maybe it's because the air power is a bit reduced. Jia Yan actually didn't kill the metal monster this time. The metal monster was flying in the air. Its legs moved quickly, and after finding that it couldn't move, the metal tube on top of its head was used as the barrel of the gun. Quickly shine with red light. Not good. When Jia Yan saw this scene, he didn't care whether he would be hit by the attacks of other metal monsters. An extremely strong sense of crisis came from the body of this metal monster, making Jia Yan's heart beat wildly. He is here at this moment. Make a subconscious dodge action. But the action was only half done, and there was no time to escape too far. I heard an extremely strong explosion next to me. Boom! The fiery red explosion flames, like the explosion of a huge incendiary bomb, covered the entire vicinity. The entire area of 300 to 400 square meters was engulfed in flames. A dozen metal monsters were too late to evacuate. They were also swallowed up by the fire, but judging from their appearance, they were still very happy to die with this big mosquito monster. This mosquito monster is after all. It is already extremely terrifying. Even dozens of them cannot kill it. If it can be killed at the cost of a few metal monsters, that would be a great deal. However, it seems that the effect of this method is still good. This giant mosquito monster obviously cannot escape. Although his defensive power makes these metal monsters extremely fearful, it is impossible to survive such a violent explosive attack. And not far from this battlefield, a dozen unkempt humans were watching the scene with wide eyes. Dad, do you think this giant mosquito is going to die? A boy who looked to be about 17 or 18 years old was staring at the scene of flames rising into the sky, as if he was worried about the giant mosquito monster. I don't know, he may die or he may not die. Why do you care about this mosquito? His father looked to be a man in his 40s. The man looked at his son strangely. His child was one of the people who recognized the giant mosquito monster just now. When he was surfing the internet, this kid loved to collect information about the giant mosquito that saved the little girl. Unexpectedly, this time he actually saw a bigger monster with his own eyes. The guy is gone. But he would never believe that this kind of monster could actually save people. He would rather believe that those troops would suddenly appear to save them, rather than believe that such a monster would save people or something. In the past, he, a child, firmly believed that giant mosquitoes would save people, and even argued with him once because of this. As a child, I am still a bit naive. Monsters are monsters, how can they save humans? He really wanted to tell his son this, but this was really not the time. The explosion just now affected the group of refugees who were hiding in the performance hall. Only a dozen people survived now. The rest, including several 2- and 3-year-old children who fled together, died in the ruins of the performance hall. If that big mosquito monster could really save humans, why didn't he save them just now? Looking at his son's appearance, the father really felt helpless. Is that giant mosquito monster that saves people so worthy of worship? At this time, they are all in such trouble, and there is no monster to save them. I can only say that children think the world is too simple. The big boy's eyes were fixed on the place where the giant mosquito was fighting dozens of metal monsters. The child's name is Wu Rongbin, and he is 17 years old. But unlike his father, this young man is not as innocent as his father thought. In fact, he had seen online posts about giant mosquitoes a long time ago. But the post at that time was not when Big Mosquito was already famous. The post he read was written by the mysterious female college student. Her post clearly recorded the story of how a mosquito several centimeters in size saved them. At that time, Wu Rongbin was not very concerned about the big mosquito, so he just read the post. However, the development of things later made him slowly feel the charm of this big mosquito. Perhaps children are easily affected by news reports, and so is Wu Rongbin. Just when the news about the big mosquito appeared overwhelmingly, the young man realized that the post he had seen before might be related to the one that appeared later. There is a connection between the giant mosquito monster that saves people. After that, he saw another post by Yetongyu, which said that the giant mosquito that saved people might be the one that saved them. The big boy believed it. And from then on, he didn't care whether it was at home or at school. They were all talking about the giant mosquito with his family and classmates, making him seem like a researcher of this giant mosquito monster. After observing a large amount of online information, this child come to a conclusion that is very similar to Yetongyu and the other two. That is, the big mosquito that saved Yetongyu and Jiang Shiming, and the giant mosquito monster that later saved the little girl in Tumen City. It's basically the same one. And in the future, after he saw the giant mosquito monster that became popular in Japan. As if he was drunk, the child firmly identified the giant mosquito monster that appeared in the Japanese country. It's the giant mosquito monster that saved the little girl in Tumen City. It was the one that once saved Yetongyu and others. No one believed what he said, just like no one agreed with Yetongyu and Jiang Shiming's words. But he believed that it came from the action patterns of several giant mosquitoes. Found some logic. Anyway, his conclusion is that although the giant mosquitoes are different in size, they are all the same. For this statement, this child didn't know how many times he argued with classmates and became red-faced, and even almost got into a fight. And now, a giant mosquito that was far bigger than the giant mosquito monster broadcast on TV appeared in front of this fleeing child, and he was immediately obsessed. Through his own distinguishing method, the child continued to believe that the giant mosquito monster in front of him was also the one that appeared on TV. These people can't see it. A series of giant mosquito reports show the growth process of this giant mosquito. He must be the same one. The big boy's eyes were shining. Except for a very small number of people who firmly believe that this giant mosquito is the same one, no one believes in this topic at all. After all, a large mosquito has been reported since it was only a few tens of centimeters long. How much time has passed now? It has actually reached more than 2 meters in length. No one will believe that such an infinitely growing monster really exists. You all don't believe me. This giant mosquito is basically the same one. One day, I will prove it to you. The child clenched his fist slightly. At this moment, another giant mosquito was born with extreme attention. Whether he can really prove that this big mosquito is the one that was once extremely famous depends on what happens in the future. However, whether this child's life can be saved now depends on Jia Yan's efforts. The figure of the big mosquito quickly appeared from the smoke and flames. In the extreme explosion, he still did not suffer too much injury. But inevitably, he was actually injured because of the self-destructing metal monster. At this time, the giant mosquito's body was covered with light scars. Some of these scars were cracks, and some were crisscrossing cuts. At this moment, Big Mosquito felt a turmoil in his heart. Jia Yan was really surprised. The metal monster's self-destruction contained extremely violent power this time. This power is different from the explosion of ordinary bombs. Although its explosion range is only 300 to 400 meters, its power is absolutely different. Although this kind of explosion is very powerful, it is still possible for him to withstand it with this level of force. But because there were extremely high temperature flames in the explosion, the funny thing is that his body could withstand the explosion, but it couldn't withstand the two hot flames. The two were superimposed, and as a result, these violent powers really hurt him. Fortunately, these scars look more numerous, but they only look scary on the surface. In fact, they don't do much harm to him. The hero is naturally the azure substance that Jia Yan saved his life several times. This blue substance has saved Jia Yan's life countless times. But this was the first time that Jia Yan saw the azure substance covering his entire body. Second update, please subscribe to the official version. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 185. I saw that the entire body of the mosquito monster at this time was an extremely weird blue color. And this color is the most powerful thing in giant mosquito now, and it is also the greatest treasure in his body. He was actually forced out by these metal monsters. The defense of the azure substance is absolute. There is no need to question the protection of the azure substance. However, the most unbearable thing for Jia Yan appeared, that is, in the exhibition defense at this time, there were actually some places where the defense was not completely in place, and the gaps exposed were where he was injured. This is simply unbearable. It wasn't as simple as being injured, but these metal monsters actually broke the absolute defense he had always believed in. Just a few metal monsters actually shattered my faith. As if stepping on flames, the giant mosquito slowly flapped its wings and flew out of the smoke, dust, and sparks in the sky. The flames behind him were like his overwhelming rage. The murderous intent in Jia Yan's eyes was stronger than ever before. These metal monsters gave him a terrifying crisis he had never experienced before. Jia Yan has never experienced this feeling before. Although he has experienced danger countless times, this danger definitely made him feel desperate. It was a feeling as if there was no place to escape from heaven to earth. The whole person was surrounded by fire, and the feeling was really extremely helpless. Although the blue substance still saved him this time, he really felt like death just now. And the metal monsters who gave him this feeling are unforgivable. Jia Yan's murderous intention is very dignified. Just like a fire phoenix reborn from the ashes, and like a giant dragon soaring in the flames, this big mosquito actually has the momentum of a mythical beast. His huge compound eyes are covered with scars, and some minor scars even block his vision. There are many wounds on his body. These wounds, some are caused by those blue substances. Jia Yan only now determined that his blue defense had a fatal flaw. This flaw was that the defense speed was not fast enough. In explosions like this one, the clot and exoskeleton were breached quickly. Therefore, the blue defense had no time to cover the whole body, and was scratched by the attack's flames and fine explosives. This incident made Jia Yan finally realize his shortcomings in defense. And knowing that he might die too. With this mutation, he has indeed become stronger. Even the red light, which could not be defended well before, is now less scary. But this doesn't mean that these metal monsters in front of him have no way to kill him. For example, this is the most lethal way to self-destruct. Such as the saturation attack of red light. It is possible that Jia Yan will die. Maybe Jia Yan is angry this time. It was also because he felt that his dream of being invincible in defense was shattered. This makes me a little angry. Of course, this idea is not very glorious, and the absolute defense that I have always believed in is shattered. Maybe it can make him realize some reality. After all, a person who cannot recognize reality will definitely die the fastest in a battle. With this experience, Jia Yan will not take dangerous actions in future battles just because he relies on his own defense. For example, when he was on the Japanese island in the morning, he thought about confronting human atomic bombs. Woolen cloth. Not having a clear understanding of this kind of thing is equivalent to not having a clear understanding of his own strength. He will definitely suffer greater losses in the future. Therefore, now that the Mosquito has learned this lesson, it is not a bad thing. But the Azure defense has not been broken through. It just deploys defense more slowly. If the next mutation can strengthen the Azure defense with a faster defense speed, my defense dream will not be shattered yet. Jia Yan still has beautiful ideas in his heart, but this idea is no longer unrealistic, because it is very possible. Although he was injured this time, the absoluteness of the blue defense was still reflected in this explosion. The places where Jia Yan was injured were all without Azure defense. The parts with Azure defense showed no trace of scars at all. But now, his idea has changed from the initial superstition of blue defense to the firm belief that all blue defense should be used to defend the whole body. As long as the whole body can be defended, not to mention absolute defense, at least the metal monster's self-destruction attack can be defended. Now, I must be more careful. At least I must not let them self-destruct next to me. Jia Yan made a decision in his heart not to let the other party self-destruct. But the best way to do this is to prevent these metal monsters from getting close. But in this case, how can he attack? Then kill them with lightning speed before they have time to make a move. Jia Yan's compound eyes are even more shiny. The big mosquito on the battlefield looked like a wounded beast. Whizzing. Several red light attacks are coming again. At this time, those metal monsters were also extremely violent. They saw a threat in this giant mosquito monster that could not be killed. This threat is not small, because this giant mosquito monster is different from any ground creature they have seen. This giant mosquito not only has extreme defensive capabilities, but also has an aura that is very similar to them. In fact, these metal monsters were indeed attracted from the ground by Jia Yan, the big mosquito. But the reason is still unknown, but they know that there is such a monster in the ground world, which is almost of the same origin as them, but it is not the same kind, but an existence that must be killed. The danger of this existence is too great. Somehow, among the instructions these metal monsters received, there was an instruction to kill this giant mosquito monster. Of course, their orders actually include killing all life on the ground. This command does not seem to conflict with or even overlap with the command to kill the giant mosquito monster, but there is still a difference, that is, the sequence of killing the giant mosquito is placed 10th front. That's why these metal monsters gave up on the humans here and rushed over to kill this giant mosquito monster. The bombardment continued, but at this time, the big mosquito changed his style of play. His speed was much faster than before. At this time, the big mosquito is attacking regardless of physical strength. After all, Jia Yan's previous plan was to maintain physical strength, but now he doesn't care so much. Now his life is the most important thing. If he gave up the attack and just ran away, it wasn't like Jia Yan couldn't escape. But at this time to protect his family, would he choose to escape? Won't. So the big mosquitoes are still fighting these metal monsters. Boom boom boom. There was a violent explosion, and the buildings here fell down one by one. The red light exploded, and the remaining metal monsters continued to launch their staged attacks. The big mosquitoes are bound to be killed in this place. And Jia Yan's attacks became more erratic. He tried his best to avoid all the attacks that could be avoided. These attacks were for Jia Yan. Although each attack would not cause him serious injury, Jia Yan could feel that these attacks could still cause him a certain amount of damage. Each injury may not be a big problem, but when combined, it's terrifying. So he is trying his best to avoid it. Hoo ho ho. The body becomes even more weird and violent. A red light passed by, the body of a big mosquito just rushed down. The speed of running was several times faster than before, so this red light attack, it just rubbed the big mosquito's body and didn't hit it. But at the same time, another red ray attack has arrived. Jia Yan's compound eyes are so bright. His body followed the inertia of the previous movement and used a dodge continuously. The body turned downward suddenly in the sky, and then rushed forward to the right. A very fast mosquito. His extremely fast speed allowed his huge body to dodge the almost impossible continuous red light shots. This time the evasion was performed so flawlessly that it can almost be said to be superb. And with this kind of evasive movement, this red light attack at a tricky angle was also narrowly avoided by Jia Yan. Very good, my speed can definitely avoid their attacks. I can definitely kill them all. Jia Yan encouraged himself in his heart. The giant mosquito's figure is even faster. His flying angle is no longer limited to dodging left and right. Sometimes it looks forward, but when the giant mosquito's compound eyes flash, it actually turns into flying backwards. Not to mention that fighter jets can't do such weird flying methods, even many real flying creatures in nature can't do it. Moreover, Jia Yan's body was so huge that it almost violated the laws of nature. But at this time, no one on the battlefield applauded his beautiful move. Not to mention that the opponent's metal monsters may not have this wisdom, and even if they did, they would definitely not cheer for him. What they thought was just how to kill this tricky flying monster. Poof! A sharp horny forefoot stabbed a metal monster hard on the front end. At this moment, the barrel on top of the monster's head suddenly emitted a fierce red light. But before that, the ferocious look in the giant mosquito's compound eyes suddenly became extremely conspicuous. The knife-shaped horns on his front feet suddenly turned hard. Click! The heart of the metal monster, whose defense should not be underestimated, was actually broken through the shell by his knife-shaped horn, and then all the defenses inside were wiped out in one go. With a broken heart, this metal monster that also wanted to self-destruct was killed by Jia Yan in one fell swoop, preventing him from self-destructing. Yes, if we hurry up, it seems we can stop it. Jia Yan looked coldly at the metal monster that fell to the ground, and finally let out a long breath. There will be another chapter soon. Recently, I am learning a new input method, so my typing speed is very slow, so the chapters are released so late. I'm sorry, I will try my best to publish them as early as possible in the future. Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 186. Okay then, it's you next. Jia Yan's compound eyes were shining brightly as he looked at the other metal monsters in front of him. These monsters still seemed to him to be powerful opponents, but compared to their methods of self-destruction, as long as Jia Yan had a solution, he would no longer be afraid. What? At this time, there are still a lot of humans in the tourist project buildings. Although most of the metal monsters have gone to attack Jia Yan, the big mosquito, there are still a few metal monsters killing humans. And that young man named Wu Rongbin is also among them. Although this young man really wanted to see the outcome of the battle between the giant mosquito and the metal monster, his father could not agree to it, and he still knew which was more important than his life. So when the big boy was running away, he didn't forget to look back all the way to see the place where the explosions continued. And at this moment, it really seemed like a battle scene not caused by humans. In the sea of fire, there were not flying figures of large mosquitoes undulating. What the child saw was so exciting that he wished he could get closer and see the whole scene into his eyes. But he didn't want to die yet, so he had to watch and walk reluctantly. Wu Rongbin, hurry up, you kid. What are you looking at? No matter who wins, they won't let us go. If you don't want to die, run away. Wu Rongbin's father was beside the child, and he obviously didn't care about the outcome of the battle between the giant mosquito monster and the metal monster. But the father's words made the child, who was already in the rebellious stage, unhappy. The giant mosquito won't harm us. He's not that kind of monster, Wu Rongbin argued loudly with his father. You. Okay, no matter what, we still have to leave quickly. This father really can't understand the reason for his child's persistence. Anyway, you can't say you're abandoning the child at this time, right? He quickly agreed. Wu Rongbin's face seemed to look better now. The two quickly passed through several houses that were not seriously damaged. They had already separated from the others as they fled for their lives. Anyway, this was the time when everyone was clearing the door, and no one cared about taking care of the other. According to their memories during the day, the two people remembered that in front of the house was the path they took when they entered. The Tanchinj government has no choice but to arrange for them to use this project as a temporary residence. After all, in Tan City at this time, the already large population became even more crowded due to the sudden influx of refugees, so they were arranged here. It can be said that there is no solution. But no one expected that the metal monsters would actually attack from this place. Caught these unarmed refugees by surprise. The path chosen by father and son is the right one. If they can reach the main road leading to downtown Tanchinj through this sparsely populated road, their chances of being rescued will be much greater. Although Tan City also does not have much combat power to defend these metal monsters. But if you escape with other refugees, your chances of survival will always be greater. The idea is very good. But the idea is that the metal monster that happens to be blocking the entrance of this trail can let them pass. That's right. The two father and son were unlucky when a metal monster chased and killed two human men. Just arrived here. On the top of its head, there is a gun barrel shining with red light. At this time, the gun barrel still had a faint red light that did not fade away. And right in front of this metal monster were two men who looked very strong. These two people were obviously resisting. One of them was holding a steel pipe in his hand, and the other was holding an iron bar. It's just that these things are as useless as toothpicks against metal monsters. Two less powerful red light shots will kill them all. Yes, metal monsters only need to use the lowest energy red light to kill ordinary humans. After all, they still need to conserve energy to act. Boom boom boom. In the distance, the battle between giant mosquitoes and a group of metal monsters was still raging. Here, a metal monster stands in front of the two father and son. Although there is only one metal monster, to ordinary humans, it is almost as unstoppable as the god of death. There is a grand battlefield over there, but this small battlefield is also a battlefield of life and death. When the two father and son saw the appearance of the metal monster, they were stunned for a moment. The metal monster was pointing the barrel at a man who was not yet dead, and the red light on the top of its head flickered slightly. When the father and son here saw that the metal monster over there was not about to deal with them, the expressions on their faces suddenly calmed down. Then, Wu Rongbin's father quickly looked around, and his eyes quickly spotted a construction site steel bar discarded on the roadside. Wu Rongbin, hurry up and go. Go back to find Uncle Lee who helped us just now. Dad is here to block it. Wu Rongbin's father quickly ran towards the steel bar. At this time, this slightly fat 40-year-old man had an extremely determined expression on his face. Dad, Wu Rongbin was stunned. Hurry up. If you are targeted by this monster, it is impossible to escape together. Only Dad can help you block it. Wu Rongbin's father picked up the steel bars on the ground. Click. At this time, the metal monster over there stepped lightly on the ground. At the same time, a faint red light shot out from its red light barrel, hitting the man lying on the ground with a trace of breath. Light kills. Poof. A stream of blood emerged from the man's body, and his eyes widened for a moment. His eyes were looking in the direction of the young man Wu Rongbin. The big boy only saw that in this man's eyes, there was a desire for life and a strong unwillingness. Wu Rongbin felt that the look in the eyes of the person who was about to die was extremely terrifying. He didn't want himself and his father to become like that. Dad. Let's go together, it won't chase us. Come on, didn't you say that Mom is still waiting for us at Third Aunt's house? We agreed to go see him together, let's go. Wu Rongbin not only didn't run, he also stepped forward and grabbed his father's sleeve. Unexpectedly, Wu Rongbin's father pushed his son desperately, his face full of flushes and tears. Let's go. Your mother was already dead by then. I promised her to take good care of you. You brat. Get out of here. What? Wu Rongbin, a big boy, seemed to have been hit by a bolt of lightning. His heart was filled with unbelievable turmoil. What is his father talking about? That evening, even though my parents were out, my father came back and said that my mother had gone to my third aunt's house to take refuge first. Mom is dead. How can it be? Wu Rongbin seemed to have been hit by an immobilization spell, stunned and unable to move. Get out of here. Wu Rongbin was stunned, feeling like he had been pushed hard. He bumped into the back. Stumbling. The voices in my head basically disappeared. His head was a mess. In a daze. The big boy only heard a familiar and majestic male voice behind him, shouting. Walk. The sound made him run quickly without realizing it. He didn't even know he could run so fast. Tears have soaked my cheeks. Big tears rolled down my face. He only heard the male voice from behind. Son. Uncle Lee will be your dad from now on. No matter what, you have to follow him until death. Wu Rongbin seemed to realize what happened just now. The big boy opened his mouth and let out a series of cries. Ah! Tears welled up. But he knew that he couldn't stop. Once he stopped, his father's hard work would be in vain. But that pain. But it penetrated deeply into the heart of the big boy. He didn't really like this dad who was not outstanding before, although this dad was not like other people's dads. He can beat and scold children, but he is too honest and can't even control his own son. At work, he is at the lowest level, with no money, no temper, and no respect. But at this time, the man who didn't look tall at first made him feel that this man was a man who stood upright. Ah! Wu Rongbin was still roaring. The pace is fast. How he hoped that this father, whom he had just met for the first time, could survive. He has already lost his mother. What will he do if he loses his father again? No. If you can save your father, even if you take your own life, it doesn't matter. This is my only family. Click. Just behind the big boy's running figure, the upright middle-aged man pointed a cold metal barrel at him. Come on, you metal trash. The middle-aged man suppressed the trembling all over his body and ran to the side with all his strength. He wanted to attract the big mosquito's attention. But at this moment, the barrel of the gun on the head of the metal monster began to light up slightly. Here, aim here, the middle-aged man ran wildly and hit the ground with steel bars to make the metal monster pay attention to him. If you have the guts, come here, the middle-aged man's eyes were already red, and he slapped his fiery chest with his other hand. Want the metal monster to hit your chest? This man's movements really caught the metal monster's attention. Its figure slowly turned around, its red barrel pointed at the noisy human. It is impossible for metal monsters to understand human feelings and family affection. So he shoots whoever he aims his barrel at. But Wu Rongbin, who was running wildly, looked back. The scene in front of him was a despairing one. The metal monster finally aimed the gun barrel at his father, a slightly stout middle-aged man. The middle-aged man roared wildly, raised the steel bar in his hand high, and smashed it at the metal monster. It was obvious that he couldn't cause any harm to this metal monster, but he still pounced on it. Tears welled up again. Wu Rongbin knew that this method was invented by a 60-year-old mother-in-law among the refugees. She said that this way, she could jump on the metal monster before death, and perhaps block its sight, so that others would have a chance to escape. After all, the mother-in-law couldn't use this method. She was buried alive in the Performing Arts Hall just now by the collapsed building. And now, Wu Rongbin saw that his father was using this trick. Who was he trying to escape for? It's his biological son. Ah! Wu Rongbin was about to get his teeth in, so he ran faster. Perhaps the next scene is the scene of his father's death. The child is unwilling to watch it. He is afraid that his heart will not be able to withstand the blow and will collapse in an instant. Who can come and save my dad? It doesn't matter even if you want me to die, the big boy couldn't stop crying. The middle-aged man behind jumped up. His body was in the air, and he saw the red light emitting quickly lighting up. He also knew that when the red light completely lit up, he would die. But this man is willing to do it. Finally, the red light turned on completely. A little light will be condensed into it. But red light, emitted. The red light shoots out through the barrel of the gun. Whoosh. Right now. Whistle, roar, roar. A huge dark thing, looking for the bookstore is like a meteor flying from outside that day. Coming at almost the speed of sound. Boom. The body of the huge creature slammed into the metal body of the metal monster. Compared with this metal monster, the body of the metal monster is an insignificant little pug, under the impact of this violent body. It flew straight up. The two colliding bodies were like missiles, crashing crazily into a building that was still under construction. Boom boom boom. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 187. P.S. I just realized that it's already 600,000 words long. This is something very memorable. There are only 46 books with more than 600,000 words in the entire starting point category of evolutionary variation, and now our giant mosquito is one of them. The current maximum number of words in this category is 4.9 million words. According to Bulletin U's plan, the perfect completed version of Giant Mosquito will be around 5 million words. I hope everyone can support Bulletin U and let me write until that time. Witness this book becoming the #1 word count in its category. Thank you all for your support over the past 600,000 words, thank you. The body of the huge creature slammed into the metal monster in front of me. He was still fighting in the battle area ahead just now. But when he was dealing with a metal monster, he heard a young male voice as he flew high into the sky. The big boy's voice was extremely miserable, as if he had encountered the most tragic thing in the world. Then Jia Yan made a decision to help this boy. So now, this is the scene where he knocks away the metal monster in front of him. But now the big mosquito's injuries are no longer so terrifying. The condensation on his body was squirming rapidly. This squirming was no longer as slow as usual, but extremely fast. They now seemed to be afraid that their master would die, and were desperately trying tangle, and then quickly repair the damaged parts of the body at the injured place. And at this moment, those azure substances, like a general who made an appearance and then retired, quickly fell into depression after relieving Jia Yan's big crisis. Boom boom boom. Jia Yan slammed the metal monster into the half-built building. Metal monsters are also extremely tough monsters, and the same is true for the metal monster in front of them. The red light shining in the barrel of its head shined very quickly, and at this moment, Jia Yan made a knife-shaped horn. It has already pierced into the heart of his chest. Poof! The metal monster's struggle suddenly stopped. Its body no longer struggled. Apparently dead. Very good, this one-hit kill is a complete success. Wow! The giant mosquito stood up from a pile of collapsed building bricks. He looked at the scene outside with compound eyes. A middle-aged man and a young figure quickly disappeared down a trail. The young man supported his father beside him, although the two figures were staggering. But he still firmly moved towards the outside world. Very well, let's escape like this. Although Jia Yan didn't know the specific situation, he could probably guess what happened. By the way, this boy's voice is really loud. There was still fighting on his side, and he could hear the child roaring. Jia Yan didn't know why. Came to help instantly. In fact, maybe it was the child's hoarse voice that touched a certain weakness in him. Maybe it was that boy. There are very deep emotions in the voice, so Jia Yan is the giant mosquito. Attracted to help. At that time, when I heard the child's voice, he was not a big mosquito trying to save people or anything. I decided to help this child. Anyway, you have to deal with the metal monsters here by yourself, right? Jia Yan made a reasonable explanation for his actions in his heart, but to the big mosquito, this matter was just a small matter. At this time, the big mosquito immediately stopped taking this matter seriously. His attention is still on the remaining dozen metal monsters that are about to be fought. This matter was just something Jia Yan did casually. For him now, saving a human life is really just a matter of making a decision based on a momentary thought. Anyway, we cannot say that we are enemies to all human beings. We can save whoever we want to save and kill whoever we want to kill. For Jia Yan, this is all based on his own ideas. Okay, the big boy's matter has been resolved. What's next? Jia Yan stared outside the building at the dozen or so metal monsters following him. You're the only ones left. I've already solved half of them. Do you still think you have a chance to kill me with the remaining half? The big mosquito stood up and faced these metal monsters, welcoming them away. Boom 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 boom. The fierce battle begins again. The fire explodes. Not far from the fire, two figures were walking slowly. This is a child and a middle-aged man who is slightly out of strength. Dad, I just said it. That giant mosquito is not a harmful monster. As you can see, he even saved you. Wu Rongbin helped his father, but at this time the big boy did not show much concern. Of excitement. Of course it was a joyful thing for his father to be saved, but he also learned the news that his mother had passed away. This news made him not know whether he should cry or laugh. Haha, it's exactly what you said. This giant mosquito is a monster that saves people. I wrongly blamed him. Wu Rongbin's father was also very emotional at this time, but unlike his son, he was weak. There is joy. After all, I had promised my deceased wife to take good care of the children and grow up, and now I can continue to do so. This is a good thing. The two father and son continued to walk towards the outside world. What they didn't know was that in the dangerous place behind them, the number of metal monsters was decreasing rapidly. That's Jia Yan's contribution. Jia Yan, the big mosquito, really got into trouble with the metal monsters. Bang bang bang. After several violent explosions, a metal monster was quickly swatted away by one of the big mosquito's front legs. This metal monster was no longer light, but it was still shot away by Jia Yan. Compared to before, Jia Yan's power was infinitely greater. He is still fighting hard. There were only a few metal monsters left in front of me. At this time, the big mosquito became more aggressive in this situation. Aren't you going to explode? Come on. If you think you can go faster than my front feet, then try it. Jia Yan's body continuously changed directions in the air, and a metal monster that he had just approached emitted a fierce red light at this moment. This metal monster didn't give Jia Yan any chance to attack him, and directly started the process of self-destruction. But what this metal monster didn't expect was that the body of the big mosquito didn't come towards him, but went directly over it and towards the other metal monster behind. Boom boom boom. This metal monster had no choice but to die alone after self-destruction. Just send out the last brilliant flame. Jia Yan looked behind him with compound eyes. I knew it. You will definitely choose this trick. His compound eyes gleamed with thought. In his opinion, although these metal monsters were not very smart, they were definitely not stupid. He killed so many of them in a row. Knowing that they cannot defeat Jia Yan, these metal monsters will choose to explode when Jia Yan gets close. This is also to be expected. And it is foreseeable that these metal monsters will choose this attack method next. Even if they self-destruct. I want to die with him, Jia Yan. I should say it's an honor. Or should I say you are terrible? Jia Yan looked at the metal monsters below who were waiting solemnly. At this time, even the red light emitted by these monsters became sparse. This is not only the reason why their energy becomes scarce, the thought of using the strongest energy to die together with Jia Yan, a big mosquito. Although your determination is very good, I'm sorry, but I have no intention of dying with you. Jia Yan's compound eyes were faint. His figure has been accelerating in the air. He didn't attack downwards, he just kept accelerating. Whistle, roar, roar. Bang. Finally, the speed of this big mosquito reached the factor even at a low altitude. Breaking through this limit, his speed becomes something on another level. It is simply extremely fast that is harmful to people. Whistle, roar, roar. The giant mosquito's figure became dazzling in the air. This is the tactic he used. From the previous battles, Jia Yan already knew that these metal monsters had reaction limits. Any creature or any machine will have this limit. It is normal for metal monsters to have their own reaction limits. Even if ordinary people estimate the maximum reaction speed of a metal monster, it is impossible to take advantage of it, because that reaction speed is too fast. But Jia Yan is different. His biggest advantage is that he is a flying creature. And it's the kind of flying creature that flies super fast. Breaking the speed of sound, see if you can react. Boom boom boom. The giant mosquito has become faster. Immediately afterwards, the giant mosquito swooped down like an attacking fighter jet. Boom boom boom. A body that exceeds the speed of sound, dazzlingly fast. I just can't react. Attacking downwards at a speed exceeding the speed of sound, and the things being attacked are creatures on the ground. Not to mention that it is impossible for human fighter pilots to do such a thing, they cannot even imagine such a thing. You must know that attacking at the speed of sound is something you only dare to do at high altitudes. If you are at a low altitude, not to mention attacking, but even flying at supersonic speeds, it is extremely dangerous. And to attack things on the ground at the speed of sound, even this attack is not using aerial bombs, but using part of the body. Such a thing sounds like a myth to any pilot. And the big mosquito did just that. It was obviously his first time, but Jia Yan didn't have any worries in his heart. Why? Because he is a natural flying creature. It would be too shameful if all flying creatures died due to flight accidents. Howl. Next to the ears of the tentacles, there was a violent sound of wind. Everything seen with the compound eye almost turns into a line like paste because of the speed. Whistle, roar, roar. The compound eyes of the big mosquito are shining with excitement. Sonic attack, one bad one, even if it just touches the ground a little bit, it's not a simple minor injury. However, what I want is this kind of excitement. The sound of wind blows on the exoskeleton of the body, and every bit of dust in the air hits the body. This feeling is so exciting. If you don't do it well, you'll end up knocking yourself away. At the speed of sound, the distance from a metal monster can be said to be within a blink of an eye. It's so fast that the opponent can't even think of self-destruction. While flying at high speed, Jia Yan slowly raised one of his forefoot's knife-shaped horns. The goal is close at hand. Big Mosquito Supersonic Lightning Attack, unfold. To be continued. 600,000 words. Thank you all for your subscription and tipping support. Baya will work hard to update. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 188. The knife-shaped cuticles on the front feet quickly moved downwards. The sharp tip has a chilling air. But no one can see clearly. Can you tell the speed of sound? Cannot. So you can't see Jia Yan clearly now? Especially at a close distance, the greater the distance from the mosquito, the more afterimages you see, which are just a series of afterimages flying by. Jia Yan himself is like this too. But on the contrary, he just couldn't see the things around him clearly, and now he just can't see the things around him clearly. The metal monster in front of him was getting closer and closer. The closer it got, the blurrier its body became, and the proximity was still amplifying. At this time, Jia Yan could hardly see the detailed structure of the opponent's body clearly. Stretch out your front feet, quick! Jia Yan roared in his heart. His knife-shaped horn has been extended halfway, but he still can't keep up with the speed. The speed of sound is terrifying. The enemy who was still far away just now has now been quickly brought closer to you. It was so fast that Jia Yan had no time to react. Almost as soon as Jia Yan had the idea of attack, this metal monster was already in front of him. He himself was caught off guard. But at this moment, Jia Yan's good attitude that he had always maintained during the battle was revealed. Most people will definitely make mistakes one after another when encountering such a nervous situation, but Jia Yan's mentality is definitely good. He just stabilizes his mentality at this time, and then silently says, "I can do it. I can do it." Under the supervision of this thought, the horniness of his stretched out forefoot became more stable. Everything happens in an instant. And it was just when Jia Yan felt that his mentality was stable and he wanted to breathe a sigh of relief. Poof! He only felt that something had been stabbed into the knife-shaped horn of his front foot. Exaggerate. Have you hit it yet? Jia Yan was shocked. The speed of sound is too fast, too fast, too fast. How could the metal monsters react at such a speed that Jia Yan himself was frightened? At this time, some of the metal monsters were still aiming at the location where Jia Yan, the big mosquito, had been. Attack! But those red lights only penetrated the night. Flying into the vast dark sky, not to mention the big mosquitoes, not even a single mosquito hair can be touched. And just when they were attacking, this giant mosquito monster made them miserable. At this time, he had already descended to the ground and launched an attack on one of their companions. Do not forget. These metal monsters have a unique way of communication. When the metal monster was attacked by Jia Yan, the monster's information was transmitted to all the metal monsters present in this way. They all knew the giant mosquito monster that attacked. At this time, they were already on the ground and attacking their companions. At this moment, Jia Yan's body quickly stabbed the metal monster in front of him. Jia Yan forced himself to look at the guy he stabbed at this moment. Bravo! It was indeed the metal monster. However, the stabbed part was a little bit off the mark than he expected, but fortunately it also pierced the metal monster's heart shell. This metal monster was in an instant. It has already lost the ability to attack, but its injured area is obviously not very serious, and it has lost the ability to attack. But they still reported Jia Yan's direction to other metal monsters, and through some mysterious calculation method, those monsters poured red light into the direction Jia Yan was going to pass. Fortunately, Jia Yan's flying method is not very rigid. When he pierced the metal monster, he had already made a change of direction, and his super high speed, no matter how powerful the computing power of those metal monsters was. But for an object like him that flies at the speed of sound and changes direction, it is still insufficient. Boom boom boom. More than a dozen red lights poured onto the ground. These red light attacks were simply covering attacks of waves of huge artillery fire. These were equivalent to the power of large-caliber weapons of a human artillery battery. When fully deployed, they were extremely powerful. But no matter how powerful it is, if it can't hit the opponent, it will have no effect at all. In the air, Jia Yan found that the accuracy of those metal monsters attacking him suddenly increased. He immediately discovered that although the metal monster on his front feet had lost its ability to attack and even lost its ability to self-destruct, it was still alive. It turns out it was you, Jia Yanfu's eyes flashed. Then the other front foot pierced the heart of the metal monster, completely destroying it this time, and then dropped the monster from the sky to the ground. Very good. Now I have attack methods, and the weaknesses and reaction speed of this metal monster have been tested. Now, it's time for me to show off my power. Jia Yan's compound eyes looked at the metal monsters under him. After the series of battles, the two seemed to be attacking and defending, and Jia Yan was even in danger. But in fact, Jia Yan's strength was far beyond that of these metal monsters. Now that he has figured out the opponent's path, Jia Yan can naturally launch an attack. Whistle, roar, roar. The giant mosquito body flies up, breaking the speed of sound again. Metal monsters have some powerful qualities, and these qualities are the reasons why Jia Yan has been in crisis several times before. The first point is that they communicate with each other. This communication method is really advantageous. As long as one of them fights with Jia Yan, the others can immediately learn the relevant information, and when they fight with Jia Yan again, they will attack based on his weaknesses. The second point is the self-destruction ability of these metal monsters. This may be the ability that Jia Yan is most afraid of now. After all, if it were those red light attacks, Jia Yan could withstand several of them without any worry, but these extremely powerful self-destruction attacks were different. Their power conversion method could never be compared with the existing weapons of humans on Earth. This kind of self-destruction seems to have a special penetrating power, which can effectively penetrate Jia Yan's current defense. The main reason is that the body surface clot and exoskeleton can be broken through very easily. The Azure defense is too late to defend and will be damaged by the attack. Arrive. Apart from these 2 points, Jia Yan is basically not afraid of other things. After all, after he got the mutation, his current strength is completely different from before. Now Jia Yan's attack method has changed after understanding the opponent's attack mode and advantages. Metal monsters have information communication. That doesn't matter. Jia Yan can try his best to attack those who are alone. When their strength reaches a certain level, their advantages in sharing information will no longer be available. As for the second point of self-destruction, Jia Yan's plan was to use the fastest speed. Destroy them before you have time to react. A sonic attack, to put it mildly. Jia Yan, this is just a violent attack. As long as anything reaches the speed of sound, that object is something that is unimaginable. If this thing hits something that was really earth-shattering, just like Jia Yan now. If he wants to hit a building, he just needs to hit it at the speed of sound, and the building will be hit by him. They will all collapse directly. After all, Jia Yan's size and mass are already so huge, plus the speed of sound. It was really indestructible, and the force of the impact could be said to be extremely terrifying. Of course Jia Yan would not use this lose-lose style of play. And now the fighting method he uses is to use his supersonic attack method. Then when the metal monsters can't react at all, they launch an attack. At present, it seems that his idea is correct. It's just that this method of attack is too tiring. Too tired, Too tired? Jia Yan also felt a little bit like he was shooting mosquitoes with a cannon, although in fact, he should be the mosquitoes. His sonic attack shouldn't be used on these metal monsters. After all, as long as these monsters are familiar with each other, they don't feel extremely scary. But if Jia Yan doesn't do this, he can't guarantee his own safety. Boom boom boom. The figure of the big mosquito once again broke through the speed of sound and pierced a metal monster into the knife-shaped horns of its front feet. Finally, after he was so tired and killed this metal monster, he realized where his biggest disadvantage was. My weakness turns out to be long-distance attacks. No wonder I've always felt so tired from fighting for so long. He finally thought of his weakness. Since then, his attack method has always been melee combat. In the past, melee combat may not have seemed so disadvantageous, but now that his strength has reached this level, his opponents have changed from the previous creatures to the current fighters, metal monsters, and human beings. After becoming a warrior, his biggest disadvantage was revealed. That means there is no remote attack method. If I have a long-range attack method, even if it is not very powerful, I can at least be of some help. But, how should I have it? Jia Yan's battle at this time gradually became easier. The reduction in the number of metal monsters below made it easier, and the use of sonic flying attack methods was an insurmountable attack method for these metal monsters. Breaking the speed of sound again and again, and attacking again and again. The number of metal monsters is decreasing at such a rapid rate. And Jia Yan's accumulated fatigue also increased rapidly. However, thanks to the use of sonic attack methods, Jia Yan's danger suddenly became very low. It was impossible for those metal monsters to catch Jia Yan's figure, and even if Jia Yan accidentally if the attack fails, it will quickly pass through the metal monsters. Even if they want to self-destruct, it will be too late. So Jia Yan was slightly distracted during the battle. He was thinking about his biggest shortcoming, which was the problem of not having a long-range attack method. How should he solve it? There are fewer and fewer metal monsters below, and the remaining monsters are just opponents to increase Jia Yan's actual combat experience. In the end, only one metal monster remained. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 189. At this time, the fighting time has passed for about half an hour. This was the first time Jia Yan had encountered such an intense battle since his rebirth. He felt extremely tired, not only physically but also mentally. He has always been in that supersonic state, and he must be careful in all his movements, otherwise flight deviations are likely to occur. Also, when killing a metal monster, you must be extremely careful with his attacks. After all, the super high speed makes it extremely difficult to control the body. If one of his attacks is not successful, his attack will fall to the ground next to him, which will result in knocking him away, losing his wife and losing his troops. Okay, you're the only one left. I'll go down and send you to your companions. Jia Yan looked at the only metal monster left below, his compound eyes flashed faintly, and his figure rushed downwards. The speed is the speed of sound. It was impossible for this monster to react. But this metal monster obviously didn't want to react. There was only one thing he wanted to do. That is, self-destruction. Anyway, it is alone. The giant mosquito in front of it has only one choice if it launches an attack. So choosing to self-destruct is naturally the best. If it fails to explode, the result will not be any different. Therefore, this metal monster with only one left started to self-destruct. Jia Yan's compound eyes suddenly flashed in the air. His body suddenly changed direction while flying at high speed. The big mosquito's body was flying at a low altitude at extremely fast speeds. And behind him, the metal monster had already begun the process of self-destruction. A red light shone on the top of this metal monster's head, and then the red light suddenly increased in intensity. Boom boom boom. Finally, when the metal monster seemed unwilling to give in, a huge explosion sounded. In a place with a radius of about 300 to 400 square meters, a huge flame suddenly rose up. The flame was extremely huge, and there was also a terrifying extreme power erupting from it. The entire ground was scorched. Boom boom boom. A large mosquito flying in the air. Looking at the scenery below, there was an inexplicable and strange luster in his eyes. The end of this huge flame represents the final result of this small battle. At this time, the tourist project development areas were no longer what they used to be. The main building was so damaged that it seemed as if it had been hit by some natural disaster and was directly razed to the ground. The facilities on the ground were also almost completely destroyed. The scenery below at this time can simply be described as miserable. Dozens of metal monsters just fell to the ground. Each one of them was destroyed by Jia Yan, and they all died on the ground at this time. Some have broken hearts. Some had their heads blown off, leaving only half of their bodies lying on the ground. Jia Yan flew from the sky to the ground. At this time, the ground was no longer what it was before the war. It was as if it had been plowed by a huge plow, and everything was a scene of great collapse. Fortunately, the war started. Human beings have no time to think about tourism or anything else, otherwise the person in charge of this development project will cry to death. Jia Yan's feet fell to the ground. He had slowed down. His body was very tired, but he did not give up on what he was going to do next. That is the blue-gray stones in the hearts of those who are searching for these metal monsters. This kind of stone is an important thing that can attract him now. Although Jia Yan cannot carry out the next mutation yet, he has not said that he will not do it sooner. Get ready. Click. The heart of a metal monster was gently cut open by the knife-shaped horn of the giant mosquito's forefoot. After the death of the metal monster, the heart became more fragile. Jia Yan only needed relatively small force to destroy and take it out. Among them are blue-gray stones. Sure enough, inside the body of this metal monster, Jia Yan found the blue-gray pebbles he wanted. This pebble is obviously not much different from the one I saw last time, and its color is more blue. Jia Yan looked at the blue-gray pebbles, which were obviously leaning towards more, and a slightly thoughtful look appeared in his compound eyes. This is not the time to think so much. Next, he speeds up. The collected pebbles were placed on the ground one by one. Jia Yan finally picked up a plastic bag from the ground and placed these important pebbles in it. There are a total of 42 remains of the metal monsters. Some of them hang around the periphery of the battlefield and kill humans. After Jia Yan killed them all, he has now collected the blue-gray stones from their bodies. Together. But there is also a regrettable thing, that is, when Jia Yan was collecting these blue-gray stones, he saw many human corpses, some of which were only children of 1 or 2 years old. Although he is no longer human, this does not prevent Jia Yan from feeling sad for these young lives. Although Jia Yan also died young in his previous life, he at least enjoyed a little bit of the process of life. However, these children did not enjoy anything and died just like that. They may not have the opportunity Jia Yan has to be reborn, so Jia Yan feels sad for these children. However, he had seen similar scenes many times on the way here. Jia Yan just sighed and said, "That's it. After all, there are no relatives." He, Jia Yan, is not a saint enough to roar with excitement and want to kill all the metals. Monster level. Even if he wanted to, he didn't have the strength. At most, he can hone his fighting ability as soon as possible and protect his family in the city. As for other people, he can't control that much. Jia Yanfei's figure slowly rose. At this time, Tan City should have known about the metal monsters here, but if they knew that Jia Yan had killed all these monsters, relevant staff should come to check. So he had to leave as soon as possible. Although he wasn't afraid of anything, it was still a bit inappropriate to come into contact with humans. Buzz. The giant mosquito flew up slightly. His wings were feeling a little sore from the previous overexposure. He had basically explored the metal monsters on the ground, picked up all the blue-gray stones, and then stored them in plastic bags. Jia Yan's body slowly rose. Since his figure has been seen by humans, he is not going to hide it too deeply. He believes it anyway. Such a small city. It is impossible to have a weapon that can be used against yourself. So the sound of his flight is not that suppressed. So much so that a group of police cars heard the noise and came from the city to investigate. Among them were police officers and auxiliary police officers. Everyone looked dumbfounded at the giant mosquitoes flying in the sky, and they were all shocked and speechless. But what these people don't know is the situation at this time. If it weren't for the help of the monster above them, they would have gone to the tourist project. It was definitely impossible to survive. After all, compared to metal monsters, their equipment and combat power are inferior. It's all too far apart. Jia Yan just looked at the police car below, with a look of relief in his eyes. Finally, he will appear openly in the eyes of mankind. He has always been evasive before. Now with his strength, he no longer has anything to fear. In addition, humans were pressed into the state by metal monsters, so now, he doesn't have to worry too much. Show your true colors openly. His wings were flapping lightly, and they were relatively tired, so he was not willing to fly too fast at this time. Hoo ho ho. The figure of the giant mosquito flew slowly in the sky. And not long after the giant mosquito flew past, a piece of news was passed on from the police here. A giant mosquito monster from China actually wiped out a metal monsters fighting team. The giant mosquito monster race is probably not from the same camp as the metal monsters, and the combat power of giant mosquito monsters is simply terrifying. There are also the 3 earliest giant monsters that appeared in China. They may not be of the same race as the metal monsters. We can expect these monsters to kill each other. For a time, the news from the Huaxia kingdom made everyone look very excited. The giant mosquito monster is now relatively famous in the world. This race of giant mosquito monsters has appeared in both the Huaxia kingdom and the Japanese kingdom. So you can expect that this giant mosquito race is also a huge monster race. Anyway, there are so many monsters in this world. It would be great if there is another so-called giant mosquito race that can fight those metal monsters. The others can't be dealt with so much. Of course, this is the view of some non-mainstream scholars and magazines, and their views do not represent the true mainstream views of mankind. After all, humans are still the masters of this planet. At least until now, no one will find this strange. After all, although the threat of those metal monsters is great, their number is still too small, and there is still time to attack the human world. Too short, there are many people who cannot clearly understand the threat they pose, and even some countries think so from top to bottom. As the dominant intelligent race on Earth for a period of time, humans have no reason to recognize other races and will only regard them as a temporary threat. As long as this threat is resolved, humans will still be the masters of this planet in the future, and no one can change it. However, those people are not satisfied with themselves after seeing the miserable appearance of the occupied areas. Their so-called theory of human dominance is simply so fragile under the bombardment of the metal monster's powerful red light weapon. The army they thought was powerful could not survive even an hour under the attack of metal monsters, and would end up completely destroyed. This war is a war of genocide without taking prisoners. However, the top human beings still have not recognized the current facts. Overconfidence in themselves and excessive contempt for the enemy will cause irreparable losses to the entire war in the future. But this is a human matter, and to Jia Yan, it is irrelevant. At most, when they see the giant mosquito monster race, which is the guess of anthropologists, they will smile a little knowingly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 190. Those humans now really regard the several mutation stages of Jiayan, the giant mosquito, as different individuals, and believe that he is not just one, but a huge race similar to metal monsters. It is said that humans still don't know whether the metal monster is a metal machine or a living creature, so there is no conclusion on the positioning of the metal monster until now. But those scientists who dissected and studied metal monsters all claimed that they had made huge discoveries. Some people's discoveries were even the front and rear feet. In the morning, this person discovered the special characteristics of a metal monster, but at night another scientist would also discover it. Due to this characteristic, some scientists are fighting over each other in order to seize the so-called naming rights. The reason for their quarrel is naturally that the various substances found in those metal monsters will have a great impact on human beings in the future. If they are named after themselves, they will be famous for generations, and they might also become maybe a great person like Einstein. Of course, metal monster can provide these people with too many opportunities. In Jia Yan's eyes, there does not seem to be any strange metal monster, but in the eyes of these scientific researchers, it is an unimaginable treasure. Those metal monster exoskeletons that Jia Yan casually dismantled and then discarded, but these human scientists discovered new types of metal materials. The structure and characteristics of these materials can enable the entire human production and life to further develop. And their unique linkage devices use a simple but extremely efficient device. It is not very difficult to imitate this device. Humans only need to simply set up the production line to continuously produce this device. Produce it? Of course, the core secret of metal monsters is the unique heart. For this, when metal monsters die, they will completely stop their own functions, although for Jia Yan, who only needs blue-gray stones for large mosquitoes, it has no effect. But for human scientists who want to crack the secrets of metal monsters. But it is a huge problem. The core secrets and techniques of metal monster may be found here. But before they die, they either choose to simply self-destruct, or they choose to transform their entire heart into a substance. It's like Jia Yan attacking the metal monster. After they die, their hearts become very fragile. This is not to allow snatchers like Jia Yan to easily obtain the blue-gray stones inside them. Instead, some kind of technology was used to chemically react the entire thing, turning it into something completely unrelated. Such scientists of the Earth just stare at him with big eyes and small eyes, and have no idea what to do. However, this has nothing to do with Jia Yan. He had been flying in the sky for a short time. Just returned to the sky above Tan City. Jia's house is located in the suburbs, so compared to the bright lights in the city, Jia's house seems a little quieter. But because we are closer to the tourism development project, we can hear the sound more clearly. When Jia Yan comes back, he saw that the home below was already brightly lit, and he could see familiar figures busy. Keep sorting out something. Jia Yan was stunned for a moment, and suddenly knew that his family felt that their home was not safe, so they were preparing to escape. If Jia Yan had not killed those metal monsters, the Jia family would have become one of those refugees, and then suffered hardships in the fleeing army, and might not be able to save their lives in the end. Perhaps I am reborn just to protect my family right now. This feeling suddenly arose in Jia Yan's heart. Ever since he was reborn, he had felt like he was living in a daze. Even though he had become so powerful due to several mutations, that feeling of confusion still existed. Until this moment, he finally confirmed his feeling, that is, one of his rebirth missions was to protect his family. Otherwise, he would really be like a duckweed, unable to find the meaning of his life. At least for now, besides the idea of becoming stronger, Jia Yan's biggest idea is to protect his family. As long as I'm here, you don't have to worry. In addition to my father as a man to rely on, I'm here at home. Jia Yan looked down, with a determined look in his compound eyes. He flapped his wings and landed downwards. He would protect his family temporarily, at least until they were safe, before leaving. Beside the white-painted guardrail of Jia's house, the body of the big mosquito slowly stopped. Buzz. The wings of the giant mosquito vibrated slightly. But the voice quickly subsided. Jia Yan gently crawled on his balcony, listening to the sounds below. The plastic bag containing blue-gray stones was stuffed into his laptop bag. During this process, he faintly heard his mother crying a little, and his little sister's voice comforting her with a cry. "That's right, my son just passed away, and now I'm encountering something like this, and he may have to leave his hometown. Under such circumstances, who wouldn't want to cry?" Jia Yan didn't hear his father Jia Sheng's voice. He must have been smoking somewhere in the house. Jia Yan didn't move, and he couldn't go down to meet his family. He can only guard silently. Although he has just killed those metal monsters, if his family wants to leave, he will follow. After all, this hometown city is gradually becoming dangerous. If his family stays here, like he can deal with a small army of metal monsters like that just now, but if there are more, he will be very difficult. Whether he can protect himself by then is one thing, but he will definitely not be able to take care of his family. Jia Yan was still recovering his strength on the rooftop. In the previous battle, he had used sonic flight for a long time, and he really felt a little tired at this time. This battle also had a huge impact on Jia Yan. Not only did he find some of the metal monsters' weaknesses and attack methods, but he also had a clear understanding of his own mutated combat power. Compared to the 1-meter-tall man before, his improvement is indeed huge. But this hugeness is just a normal standard, and indeed, as Jia Yan had guessed before, this improvement may be the biggest improvement since he was reborn as a mosquito. But this hugeness did not reach the level of Jia Yan's own delusion, or should I say, it's probably Jia Yan who thinks too much. It's good to have such a battle. Let Jia Yan recognize himself and his fighting power. He neither belittles himself nor is too blindly arrogant. My combat power is indeed very strong now. Since the last battle with the fighter jet, my strength has actually surpassed that of ordinary human flying weapons. Let alone me now. Even the powerful attack weapons of the human world, such as ordinary artillery fire, probably won't have much effect on me. Jia Yan thought for a while. A long time passed. The packing matters of the family below are still going on. But Jia Yan has heard it? Waves of excited cheers came from around the city. That was the crowd cheering after getting the giant mosquito monster and destroying all the metal monsters that would invade in the future. While the Jia family was still busy, the neighbor uncle whom I met before came to visit. Came to knock on the door again. The news he brought was indeed Jia Yan, the big mosquito, to dozens of metal monsters. News of a big win. The Jia family seemed to be happy, but their tidying up action still did not stop. Although the metal monster was killed once by the giant mosquito monster, who knows if the giant mosquito monster also has murderous intentions towards humans. Since he can kill all the metal monster teams, his combat strength is definitely stronger than those metal monsters. If this is the case, how will the facts change? It's just that from being under the threat of metal monsters, to being under the threat of giant mosquito monsters. Although they have not heard that the giant mosquito monster has caused any killings here, the Jia family still decided to pack their luggage and choose a way out. Hearing that the family members below were not immersed in the joy of giant mosquitoes helping humans eliminate metal monsters, Jia Yan's prostrate body became even lower. There was a little bit of sadness in his eyes. He couldn't go down and say anything, and he couldn't be by his side to truly spend this frightening night with his family. After all, people have different paths, he thought. Everyone in the Jia family was still packing their luggage, but what they didn't know was that right above their heads, The giant mosquito monster that everyone was talking about was crawling there, acting as their family's strongest bodyguard. But this all happened without the Jia family knowing. Jia Yan was lying calmly, his body's lost strength and slight scars slowly recovering. The strongest benefit of the mosquito, which Jia Yan initially thought was the strongest thing the mutation brought to him, is that it can quickly recover from physical injuries. At this time, his body recovered from the injury even faster. He was attacked by those metal monsters with red light several times. Those red light attacks were no longer something that he could not bear now, but once he was attacked more times, his body still appeared some concussive injuries. And this is not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing is that the metal monster self-destruct, which caused even greater damage to Jia Yan. Jia Yan even thought about death that time. But fortunately, it seems that even if the blue defense has no time to defend, his current body surface clot and exoskeleton defense are still relatively strong, at least they have not become as paper-like under the devastating blow of this explosion. Was immediately broken through. Of course, compared to Azure defense, that's just like pediatrics. Jia Yan has been worried that this blue defense had already appeared when he mutated last time, but so far, he still hasn't seen any signs of being completely controlled. If Azure defense can be used as a regular defense method by Jia Yan, that will really be the biggest surprise. When the time comes, if Jia Yan really dares to collide with nuclear weapons, he might not be afraid of the metal monster's self-destruction. However, these are things that he cannot do now, so Jia Yan has to put this extravagant hope aside at this time. Then, let me think about my biggest shortcoming now, the method of long-range attack. With my current physical fitness, there must be something I can do. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 191. The Jia family in the house are sorting things out, while Jia Yan is contemplating on the rooftop. His greatest reliance now is not strength or flying speed, but defense. Especially the blue defense, this thing gives him a survivability that far exceeds other aspects. However, the single offensive method makes Jia Yan still not appear to be that powerful. His current offensive ability is basically a close attack. Compared with current opponents, such as metal monsters, this attack method can use red light to attack Jia Yan before he gets close. Even if he gets close, he can still use it. The method of self-destruction made Jia Yan lose everything. So Jia Yan urgently wants a long-range attack method. Don't be so powerful in close combat, as long as you can confuse the enemy, it's good, so Jia Yan is thinking about it. His physical fitness is extremely strong, so he feels that he should be able to find his own long-range attack method. If not, he can just take a stone and hit people while flying at high speed, which is extremely powerful. Just attack. After all, stones thrown at the speed of sound also travel at the speed of sound, similar to bullets. But there is no need to consider the accuracy, not to mention a series of problems. The biggest problem is that this idea is indeed good, but the problem is that it poses almost no threat to metal monsters. You must know that Jia Yan's opponent cannot be solved with a bullet, and Jia Yan does not need the power of a mere bullet to assist. After all, his level of strength has reached a high level. Things that he thought were threatening before, such as a supersonic sniper bullet, are now like a joke. Not only to him, but also to those metal monsters, there is no deterrent. Stronger. So Jia Yan thought for a moment. Give up on the simple idea of throwing pebbles that break the speed of sound in the air. But at this time, he suddenly thought of something from the words little stone. The small blue-gray stone is a very important core of those metal monsters, and after their death, it will not become useless. This thing is still attractive to me. It is obviously impossible to possess a certain amount of energy. It's not as simple as a little energy. Thinking of the scene he saw before, Jia Yan's heart moved even more. With slightly bright eyes, He picked up his laptop bag. Take out the plastic bag containing the blue-gray pebbles and pour out one of the blue-gray pebbles. This small bluish-gray stone has a light cyan color as a whole, but there are some dark blue stones in it. This color appears. It's easy for Jia Yan to think of the blue defense on him. It is precisely because of this characteristic that Jia Yan is now very interested in blue-gray pebbles. And the pebble he took out seemed to be more refined than the other blue-gray pebbles. The blue color on its surface is already quite obvious. The most unique thing is that there are blue areas that look like cracks in the blue-gray surface. They must be related to the blue substance on his body. Jia Yan looked at the small blue stone. It feels more like a desire. The more pebbles there are, the more desires he has in his heart. The one in front of him has turned his desire into reality. He has to suppress it forcefully in order to control his devouring desire. Not at the moment. When it was time to devour, what he needed was to study this small blue-gray stone. Let me first make a hypothesis. If this small blue-gray stone is really related to the blue defense of my body, then it must have some kind of energy, and it is more important in the core heart of the metal monster. Then could it be the energy source of the metal monster? Jia Yan analyzed in his heart. Jia Yan thinks this analysis makes sense. But there are also many unreasonable places. That is, if this pebble is really an energy source, why would the metal monster still leave behind this bluish-gray pebble after it destroyed itself, instead of destroying this seemingly important energy source together? Unless it was Jia Yan's extraordinary supersonic attack, other times, he didn't believe that those metal monsters couldn't do this. I dare to judge that they are the energy source of metal monsters, and there are certain reasons. That is, none of the metal monsters that self-destruct left any traces of blue-gray pebbles. This is either because the pebbles were completely vaporized by the energy of the explosion, or they are the energy source of the metal monsters. When they self-destruct, the blue-gray pebbles exploded directly, and the energy was completely consumed, so no trace could be found. And this small blue-gray stone seems to have a unique characteristic. I saw it with my own eyes in the previous battle, but this is all my own guess. I want to verify whether this guess is correct. You'll know if you try it. Jia Yan's compound eyes flashed faintly. He didn't know if his half-assed guess was correct. Anyway, it didn't matter. Whether this blue-gray pebble had strong energy and whether it had the characteristics he guessed, he would know after testing it. Jia Yan stood up on the top of his rooftop. The busy family members below seemed to be very sleepy from being in a hurry for so long. After tidying up, they went to sleep. Jia Yan held the blue-gray pebble in his hand and spread his wings on his abdomen. He quietly flew up, grabbing the pebble with his front feet, and disappeared into the midnight of early morning. Tan City at this time should have been a quiet night. But at this time, the streets of Tanjung were filled with refugees from other places. Some of them fled from the nearest city, and some fled from far-away places. After all, those metal monsters attack cities without any rules, and their combat effectiveness is extremely strong. Some cities clearly I heard that the farthest metal monsters appeared hundreds of kilometers away, but I didn't expect that the next day, they would be attacked by a team of 100 or 200 metal monsters. And just like this, the 100 or 200 metal monsters that were running around were like this. It's enough to determine the future of a city. When they attack, it's simply not something that a place's armed capabilities can withstand. So the survivors in that city became refugees, taking refuge in various parts of the country. Of course, there is also an element of luck in such things. In fact, the cities attacked by metal monsters at this time were only a small part compared to the huge number of cities in the entire Huaxia kingdom. Some people don't say they were attacked. They didn't even pay much attention to the news about metal monsters. To them, this matter seemed to be nothing to do with them. As for the unlucky ones, not only their hometowns were attacked, but then they relied on relatives and friends. As a result, the cities where their relatives and friends lived were also attacked. After several attempts to escape, they almost felt that there was no safe place in this world. To date, it's been exactly a week since the metal monster attacked China. /U0026N. BSP, as many as 50 cities at or above the county level in Huaxia fell. Compared to the size of more than 5,000 county level and above cities in the entire Huaxia kingdom, it's really not that many. But this is definitely not too little. Residents of more than 50 cities have become displaced persons. Some of them were able to escape to relatives and friends, but most of them were people who had nowhere to go and no property to bring with them. Each and every one of them has to suffer from hunger, and there are millions of them. Millions of refugees. This result is naturally a huge catastrophic result that affects the entire China. At this time, Jia Yan was flying in Tianjin, a city that was basically in danger. The people in the city have heard the news of the fighting outside the city. They are all extremely nervous, and the more experienced escapees among them have already packed their bags. People believe that the first wave of metal monster attacks has arrived, and the next attack will come soon. They do not believe that the so-called giant mosquito monster will help the humans in the city. So it's better to be prepared to escape as soon as possible. Just like the Jia family, many old residents have packed their bags and have to prepare to abandon their hard-earned homes for the sake of their lives. Jia Yan looked at the scenery below and let out a long sigh in his heart. When disaster occurs, the suffering of the people is simply indescribable. There are too many stories in this. But Jia Yan won't care so much. All he can do is take care of his family. The body of the big mosquito was even spotted by a few humans pointing their fingers at the sky, but when others looked over, the huge body had already disappeared into the night. This early morning, the moon hid in the clouds. Jia Yan's body was hidden in the night, and it was almost impossible to see his appearance clearly. However, his body did not fly very far. After all, Tan City is in the midst of your crisis at this time. Even if it is not a metal monster, there are too many dangers threatening his family, so he will naturally not go far at this time. He came to a deep mountain not far from the city. This mountain was in a barren mountain area. There was not a single human figure at this time. Jia Yan used his heat detection ability and could not see any human shadow. So he took out the blue-gray pebble he had brought out. The pebble was still shining faintly there, and he had no idea how it would be treated next. At this moment, Jia Yan's wings began to fly quickly. Not long after, the speed reached about 500 kilometers per hour. Don't underestimate this speed. It may be different from Jia Yan's current speed limit, but in fact this speed is already very exaggerated. A stone thrown at this speed is not much different from the kinetic energy of a bullet. Jia Yan was in the air, staring at a barren mountain with almost no trees below. This barren mountain was caused by excessive logging by humans. He vaguely remembered that when he was a child, his mother took his brothers and sisters to pick wild vegetables here. At that time, this mountain forest was like a big mountain forest, but now it has become a bare mountain forest. But this is a good testing ground for me. It depends on now whether you can verify your guess. Whoosh. When Jia Yan's speed reached about 500 kilometers per hour, he put the green ash in his feet. Throw the pebbles down. Whizzing. The blue-gray pebbles flew downwards with a violent sound of wind. Soon there will be almost no shadow left. Jia Yan's compound eyes flashed faintly, paying attention to the falling blue-gray pebble. Whether you can prove my suspicion depends on now. There was a slight expectation in his heart.